Hi there. This is week 6 of the course Terrorism and Counterterrorism, comparing theory and practice. And in this week we're going to discuss the issue of foreign fighters. Well, actually, last week we discussed how to deal with terrorism, the impact of terrorism and terrorism-related incidents. We looked into under-researched topics and the future of terrorism. And in previous runs, in the first 2 runs of this course, that was the end of the course. But in light of developments in Syria and Iraq, and given the global impact of the phenomenon of foreign fighters, we decided to add this video to the course because it's highly topical and I think it deserves to be part of this course on terrorism. This is the number issue on many agendas around the world. So what are we going to discuss this week? We're going to look into the question, why is it making headlines today? What's so relevant, what's so important about this phenomenon of foreign fighters? Then we look into the foreign fighters in Syria. Questions like, why do they go? What are they doing out there? And then third, we're going to look into different foreign fighting groups in Syria that are active there. Some are also active in Iraq, like Islamic State. And we look at foreign fighters as a threat. Do they pose a threat over there or in the countries of origin? And then finally, we look into policy options. What can be done about this phenomenon? And we will use the UN counterterrorism strategy as a guideline. Why is it making headlines today? Well, it's very much related to the Syrian uprising. A number of demonstrations in 2011 and in 2012 that turned into a civil war between, on the one hand, the regime of Assad and many opponents who want to get rid of that regime. But also many from outside Syria joined the fight, so-called foreign fighters. And according to a report by the Soufan Group in June 2014, no less than 12,000 fighters from 81 countries joined that civil conflict. And according to Gilles de Kerchove, the counterterrorism coordinator of the European Union, in September 2014, there are no less than 3,000 Europeans, EU citizens or residents, that are also fighting in the conflict in Syria. So it's making headlines because of this international nature, but especially because of the fact that it's a very bloody civil war, causing a lot of casualties, people being killed, refugees, etc. Add to that the fear that some of these foreign fighters might return to their countries of origin and also start causing trouble out there. What do we know about these people and why they go? So what about research into this phenomenon of foreign fighters? Well, first, how to define it. I like the definition by Mallet, who defines foreign fighters as non-citizens of conflict states who join insurgencies during civil conflicts. Basically, it's people that are not part of that country that go to another country to join the fight over there. And this phenomenon is not new at all. Let me focus on Europeans, but also others that joined a foreign fight in the past. Think of the Spanish Civil War. Many people from around the world, here you see a picture of Hemingway, famous American writer who was also part in that civil war. They joined either the conservative Franco side or the leftist side with the international brigades. Another example from the 1930s, this took place in the 1930s, was the invasion of Finland by the Soviet Union in 1938, the Winter War. Big nation versus small Finland. No other country went to the aid of Finland, but thousands of volunteers did. Mainly from Scandinavian countries, Sweden, Denmark, Norway, but also from Britain, Germany, Hungary and other states. And then more recent examples, Afghanistan. Also after the invasion of the Soviet Union, 1979, a lot of people came to the aid of the Afghans as Muslim fighters that wanted to defend the Ummah being attacked by the Soviet Union. And also another example from the past is Bosnia in the early 1990s, where a lot of people came to the aid of the Bosnians and the Bosnian government. But what do we know about this phenomenon? What do we know from research? If I have to recommend one general study about foreign fighters, it's the book by David Mallet. Here you see the cover, Foreign Fighters, Transnational Identity in Civil Conflicts. And he collected data on foreign fighters and looked into civil conflicts between 1815 and 2005, and he discovered that in the 331 cases there were at least 70 of them featuring foreign fighters. But in general there's surprisingly few studies. So it's not a new phenomenon, it's happening in 70 out of 330 cases, but very little studies. And most studies are case studies about countries, single cases, mainly descriptive, about numbers and trends, but no general explanations. And again, the exception to the rule is the book by Mallet. There are more exceptions, a study by Mustafa about the Mujahideen in Bosnia, foreign fighters as cosmopolitan citizens and or terrorists, and a book by Mark Sageman, Understanding Terror Networks, that partly looked into foreign fighters in Afghanistan. We know very little on the individual level. Why did a person, what's the motivation of persons to go there, the individual motivation? Little about the return and reintegration. We know that thousands in the past have gone to places to fight, foreign fighters. Some have died, but many have returned. But how? And what have they done after that, after their return? There's also little on the organizational aspects and obstacles. People might want to join a group, but do they manage, and how does that work? Are they accepted or not? And we also know very little about why some person might have had the idea, even expressed the idea, I'm going to join that fight, but in the end, for certain reasons, did not go. Some conclusions on the yet relatively limited body of knowledge on this subject. Well, the conclusions so far are not very surprising. They go for ideological or religious reasons, or political religious reasons. It's often organized or part of a larger movement, transnational movement, and they're mainly young and mainly male. And most historical cases are cases in which government actors or governments directly or indirectly sponsored it. Well, after 2012, you could say the situation has improved. There's a lot more interest in the study of foreign fighters, and we see a sudden increase in publications, reports, etc., mainly by governmental agencies, think tank and consultants, and relatively few scholars yet. And most of these studies, especially from the West, are alarmist in nature. They focus on the potential threat to the countries of origin, and they're very policy oriented, focusing on prevention, the return and reintegration of foreign fighters. And they have less interest, or there's less attention for the impact on the ground in Syria, Iraq and elsewhere. To what extent do these foreign fighters contribute to the atrocities? Are they a fighting force to be reckoned with, or are they just cannon fodder or nuisance to these groups? Or are they important mainly for propaganda reasons? And also an important question, are they accepted by the local population or not? Well, we can explain the boom, of course, because there's money available, there's these pressing questions that the governments face, and they have provided funds to do research. Maybe more important is that it's a relatively open debate. The terrorism label has not always been used, and it's not always a criminal offense to support foreign fighting groups. In most countries it is, but not in all countries. And many actors are involved. You can study this phenomenon from many different angles. From the impact that this phenomenon has on inter- and intra-faith relations, the role of parents and communities, to the international dimension, the military and diplomatic dimension. And finally, very important, there's the possibility to have access to key players, the foreign fighters themselves. We discovered with my team that it's actually surprising how many of them want to talk to you, or people that have the intention to go want to talk to you, either directly or by way of social media. To sum up, foreign fighters are not a new phenomenon, but it's been surprisingly under-researched, at least until recently. There has been a boom after 2012 because of the situation in Syria. And it's actually quite surprising how many opportunities there are to study today's foreign fighters. In the next video we'll look into foreign fighters in Syria. Who are these people and why did they go to join the fight in Syria?